How's it going, Yankee fans? My name is Alex with my co-host here, Ryan Garcia, and we got some reinforcements coming back to the bullpen in a couple of days, if not weeks here down the stretch. We don't exactly know how they will deploy this bullpen come the postseason in the playoffs, but we do know that they can get some adequate results, adequate efficiency and production out of some of these guys coming back from the injured list right now. Notably Aroldis Chapman, Zack Britton, even Luis Severino. Rather, he's a starter, but during the postseason, he could be a bullpen arm. We'll see kind of how their strategy rounds out. But, this bullpen is definitely going through a bit of adversity. They've been picking up the slack in the meantime. Clark Schmidt has looked really solid in the stead of Scott Efros, who's been out for a couple of weeks now. Of course, Chapman had the leg infection stemming from the tattoo. And then, Zack Britton, who had the UCL injury, and, he's been kind of fighting his way back over this past year. So a lot of guys on the way back. Reinforcements are coming, and that's a good sign. The Yankees have won 6 of the last 8 games. They've scored 20 runs combined in the last 2. This is a team that's definitely looking a lot better offensively. And if they get healthy with DJ coming back, Anthony Rizzo, Harrison Bader is still going. He's doing another rehab assignment, today or tomorrow. So that's a really good sign as well. But, we want to focus on some really big time additions to the bullpen that can help this team down the stretch, Ryan. But before we dive into the good stuff, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. I think, we're looking at this Yankee team right now, and this is a team that's, they've played better as of late. They've won 6 of their last 8 games, and they're starting to kind of gel a little bit. And as you mentioned, getting reinforcements in that bullpen is big, right? The bullpen's pitched well. It's not like the bullpen's been a weakness of the team necessarily, but you can never have enough pitching. Pitching wins championships. Pitching's kind of just is this emphasis. It's such a big part of what gets teams over the hump in October. It helps you beat teams that you may not necessarily be better than on paper, but a couple of good pitchers here or there can, change the tide of a series. And we look at the caliber of arms coming back. Efros, as you mentioned, Britton, as you mentioned, Chapman, Castro. I think you look at Castro as kind of the lower echelon guys, not one of the better guys, not one of these top flight arms, but, he does have really good stuff. It's not like the Yankees, got him just to get him. His ERA was at a 4, but his FIP at a 3.75 suggests, that he was a better pitcher than his ERA suggests. He has a problem with getting barreled this season, which is, unfortunate because he really hasn't given up hard contact in previous seasons, but perhaps that is something that gets adjusted when he returns. But the guy I'm excited about the most outside of Efros, who, the Yankees traded for and was pitching well when he was healthy, is Britton. Zack Britton, I know, had a really bad 2021 season. It was really bad. There was no excuse for it. But the thing is, the guy was pitching through he had a chip in his shoulder. So the walk rate goes up. The strikeout rate dips a little bit. But the ground ball rate stays roughly the same. Doesn't get hit a lot harder. The velocity was down. But you know what? You look at the ground ball rate and you're like, he still got ground balls, right? He still was getting guys to, hammer the ball into the ground. And if you look at a guy like Zack Britton, if you can just get him to find the zone a little bit more, it's not like this is a guy who has like great command in his past. From 2017 to 2020, he walked 12% of batters and ran a 2.44 ERA. That's just who Zack Britton is as a pitcher. He walks guys. He's going to miss it out of zone. He's not going to get a ton of strikeouts. His strikeout per 9 rate hasn't been above a 7 since 2016. So again, this is not a big strikeout guy, but he still puts up strong ERAs. He still puts up strong win probability added, which means, in clutch situations and big time spots in games, he's getting big outs. And I look at Zack Britton and I look at the slider. He's been using it a lot more at the minor league level, and it's performed very well. In the data we have publicly available in his couple of outings in Tampa with the Harpoons, his slider was getting a lot of whiffs. He wasn't using it, kind of as just like a pitch he throws every now or then. He was using it almost as much as he was using his sinker. And that slider is an important pitch with lower sinker velocity because it's going to help him get some more strikeouts. It'll, give a different look. It'll go down the way to lefties, down and into righties. You think of that sinker that's been that dominant pitch for him for getting ground balls. With less velocity, it's going to have worse stuff inherently. So, having that second pitch, relying on that second pitch, you look at Zack Britton as a guy who can maybe give you a 3.4, 3.5 ERA. This is a bullpen that doesn't have a lot of lefties. It's Wandy, it's Litke, and Marinacio's a righty, but he's used as that lefty guy. He's a guy who the Yankees try to throw in to get lefties out, but they don't have a ton of lefties in there. So if Britton can be a good option versus lefties, those big, those scary lefties in the American League, you've got guys like Yordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker. You look at, with the Tampa Bay Rays, they have a plethora of guys who are great platoon options from the left-handed side. G-Man Choi, a guy like that. Wander Franco's a switch hitter, but you'd like to keep him on the ground. You'd like to keep him from smacking line drives all over the field. And Britton's going to be a guy who turns a lot of double plays. A big key for this team has been their infield defense. And I know that we've had our complaints with guys like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa at times, but Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is mountains, tiers better than what Gleyber was giving us defensively at shortstop the last few years. Gleyber looks like a much improved defender at second base. Josh Donaldson, as bad as he's been with the bat, has been a great defender at third base. And Peraza, Cabrera, DJ, Rizzo, these are, and even Marwin have all been good defensive infielders. So we take pride in our infield defense now. And you have a strong infield defense. You get a guy who gets a 60 to 70% ground ball rate back. And you can see a lot of double plays converted, a lot of big outs. And this is a guy who could potentially be a little bit of a secret weapon. Teams haven't seen him in a while. So perhaps that gives a new look. Perhaps that's that edge you have over a team like Houston, perhaps in the October, where you bring him out in the bullpen to get a big out against a guy like Yordan Alvarez. Even if it's one out, you can get him to roll into a double play. So, Britton is the guy who excites me the most because we haven't seen him in a while. And unlike Chapman, who he struggled, but his struggles have continued to persist and continue to be an issue. Even coming back from injury, we haven't seen what Britton looks like. And we know that Britton has this pedigree of just being such a dominant closer, even as a Yankee. So it's a good closing option as well. Yankees don't have a set closer, so we'll see. But Britton is definitely someone who excites me because he's just has a great track record and, he's got closing experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, sometimes lefties either sacrifice velocity for movement. You don't normally find lefties. Like Chapman's a unique guy. Like you don't find lefties all the time that are throwing 100 miles an hour. But what's really cool about Zack Britton is that he throws pretty solid velocity in terms. He's getting like 95 miles per hour on average with his sinker, back in 2019, at least before all the injuries. Now, who knows where he's kind of settling in at. We'll see what is his velocity. Does the chart show what his velocity has been lately during the bullpen sessions?
Yeah, so in this one of his outings, he sat at 90, but he sat at 92 or 93 in other outings. It's definitely lower than what it was in 2019 and 2020. It's right around where it was in 2021, which I know could be concerning because he was so bad in 2021. But again, I point to the command as the bigger issue, not as much the velocity, because the sinker, you're getting ground balls. You're not striking people out with it.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, look, his velocity is down a little bit, but again, like you said, it doesn't really matter. It's getting a lot of movement nonetheless. That sinker, at least looking back at 2019 specifically, which was the last season he really was dominant over a pretty substantial sample size. That sinker was generating 13% more, vertical movement than the average. And his slider is just absolutely filthy, 18% more vertical movement, and then 36% more horizontal movement. So he's a guy that, can come in here and make an impact immediately. Like you said, he's kind of a secret weapon. People have not seen him in a long time. He's different than Aroldis Chapman in many different ways. He just produces so much ground ball, success. And that's kind of where that defensive infield is going to come to play. That is where they're going to make their money, is from pitchers like this. That's kind of what Jameson Taillon did early in the year. He was forcing a lot of weak contact, a lot of ground balls, and then they kind of started to catch up to him and hit him out of the park. But Britton can definitely offer you some value down the stretch. And at the very least, I don't know exactly if they'll use him during the postseason. I imagine the plan right now is probably not, unless he just looks so good you have no choice. Which obviously is a best case scenario. I think right now you're looking at Zack Britton really just helping to mitigate fatigue down the stretch here. Scott Efros, he's been dealing with his injury a couple weeks now. We need him during the postseason. Zack Britton can help smooth over those. Situationally, he's a great guy to have, a lefty batter against lefty batter. He's really good in those instances. So there is a lot of value that Zack Britton can bring to this team, even if his velocity is down a little bit. He's still, kind of going through his rehab assignments. I do believe he struck out 2 batters and walked 1 recently for Somerset, which is a pretty good sign. Definitely getting his strikeouts back up. That's exactly what we want him to be doing. Again, it's against Somerset. It's with Somerset against AA players, so he should be dominating them. But this recovery has been long. It's been a long road for him to make a comeback here. He's 34 years old now. He's on the last year of his contract, making $13.3 million on average per year on a 4-year, $53 million deal. So after this season, he's certainly gone, unless, the Yankees say, hey, you know what? He looked pretty good. Let's bring him back on a really affordable, cheap deal. The Yankees do like to do that. They do like to bring back guys who are coming off injury on very team-friendly deals. And we know what Britton can offer this team when he's healthy. We know he is very good in many different respects. He was producing a 77.2% ground ball rate back in 2019, which is tremendous, with an 86.8% left on base rate. So we've seen the best of him. We've seen what he can do. I'm optimistic that he can make an impact down the stretch and at least mitigate some fatigue and be a situational pitcher for this team and help in some ways. But Chapman, on the other hand, a little bit more interesting, right? Chapman has been polarizing. Future Hall of Fame closer here, 34 years old as well, in the final year of his deal. 3 years, $48 million, making $17.5 million per season. He's going to be a free agent next season. I doubt he comes back after what he's kind of done this year. He had Achilles tendonitis issues, then the infection to his leg is a 4.70 ERA, 4.88 xFIP over 30.2 innings. His strikeouts are down significantly to 10.27 per nine from 15.5 last year. His ground ball rate has dropped to 33.8%, a 10% decrease from last season, and a 73.6% left on base rate. Velocity is down as well. Altogether, it just seems like he regressed significantly. I know you absolutely hated Aroldis Chapman in the middle of this season when he was walking batters and whatnot, because that's like a cardinal sin for closers. But I'll tell you what, in the beginning of August, he actually looked kind of like his normal self. He went, I think, 6 games without giving up a run. And then the infection started to impact him once again. And, he gave up 3 earned runs in a 2-game span against Tampa and then the Blue Jays. So, maybe they can get back to normal. Aroldis Chapman, he struck out the side, I believe, 2 days ago. So, we'll see what he can do. This is a guy who definitely can be impactful. We need, him to be at the top of his game come the postseason. He is a very good situational pitcher when he's on his game. But again, can we really trust him right now? That's the big question. What are your thoughts on Aroldis Chapman and maybe, relying on him down the stretch?
Here's the thing. Chapman is always going to have like elite tier stuff. Like I'll always make the argument that Aroldis Chapman has some of the best stuff in this bullpen. The issue is, as you mentioned, the command. And then also, you talked about with Britton where he keeps the ball on the ground. You don't worry that Britton's blowups are going to be walk, 3-run bomb, because he very, very rarely gives up home runs. He keeps the ball on the ground a lot. With Chapman, there's that factor of he's a ticking time bomb for a home run. He's a ticking time bomb to give up a long ball. And when you walk guys, let's think of the 3 true outcomes here for pitchers that they can 100% control: home runs, walks, and strikeouts. He excels at getting strikeouts. He's bad at limiting walks, and he's bad at limiting home runs. So when you're bad at 2 of the 3 things that you typically look at for a pitcher to succeed in order for them to have stable success long-term, Aroldis Chapman is not a guy who could have stable success long-term as long as those 2 of those 3 things are things that are his Achilles heel, right? This isn't a guy like Clay Holmes where, sometimes he'll unravel, right? And walk a couple guys here or there, or a couple ground balls will sneak through. Same thing with Britton. There are guys who are home run prone. Even Garrett Cole is inherently home run prone, but Garrett Cole doesn't walk people, right? So, there's none of that worry that he's going to walk 2 or 3 guys and give up a home run. That worry doesn't necessarily exist for Garrett Cole. Yes, he's given up home runs this year, but the ERA has stayed pretty solid, even in a down year, because he doesn't walk dudes. So you need to be good at 2 of those 3 things. And Chapman is really, really bad at 2 of those 3 things. He's an average. He's horrific at 2 of those 3 things. And even if you look at strikeout rate, 25.7% is close to league average in today's game. So he's not special at getting strikeouts. He's really bad at limiting walks, and he's given up a ton of home runs, right? He's given up 4 home runs in 30 innings, which is a 1.17 home run rate. That's above league average. It's not where you want to be at. He's got to do better, right? And I can't trust him to close games. I can't trust him to be better than Clay Holmes. I can't trust him to be better than Jonathan Loaizaga. I can't trust him to be better than Efros or Wandy Peralta. Or would you even put him over Marinaccio or Licky to close a game? I mean, how many guys are we confident Aroldis Chapman is better than in this bullpen? And I'm not saying better stuff, just better than. You trust him in a big game. I've seen Lou Trevino close out games. I trust him more, I think, more than Chapman right now. Do I trust Clark Schmidt? Maybe a little bit more. These aren't even like high profile guys or guys that were anticipated to come in and be closing options. And I would trust them to close over Aroldis Chapman. So in October, in a big spot in the 7th inning, you need someone to get a lefty out. I think I'm going to Britton. I'm going to Licky, maybe even. I'm going to Peralta. I'm going to Marinaccio before I'm going to Chapman. I think that's kind of the issue when I feel like I don't need Chapman. So the Yankees, his deal's expiring. Same thing with Castro, same thing with Britton. And that's what makes this interesting as well. DFAing them is not a problem because you're going to pay them anyways. You might as well clear the roster space. We saw this with Heaney last year where Heaney struggled and they DFA'd him, right? Because they need the roster spots and he's a free agent at the end of the year. There's nothing to lose. So it'll be interesting to see, how these 3 guys, they're basically fighting for roster spots that don't exist. And they're fighting against guys, how can you really send, you probably can send Weissert down. You could probably DFA Weber. What are you going to do with Schmidt? You're going to send him down, or are you going to send him down for, Chapman? Is that really fair? Schmidt's pitched better, right? Schmidt's the better pitcher. Are you going to DFA Herman for Chapman? I'm not saying that Herman's some special arm, but has Herman helped you? Yes. Are you going to DFA him for Chapman when he has 3 years of control after this? You're not going to do that. You're not sending down any of the other starters. You're not DFAing Tyone. You aren't, you're not sending down Cortez, or, you're not sending down Loaizaga or Peralta. You can't do any of those things. So these 3 guys are fighting for roster spots that don't exist. So it'll be interesting to see which guys stick and which guys don't. I'd honestly say that if you ask me right now, they probably don't bring in Castro into the fold, but come October, these rosters shrink again. One of Chapman or Britton or both are not going to have jobs in October. So they got to pitch really freaking well. No stinkers. It can't be. They got to be nearly perfect, because you got to work your way into the fold and then up the depth chart and then past guys who have pitched well for 160, 150, however it may be, games. They have a lot of guys with sub 3 ERAs, a lot of guys who throw strikes, a lot of guys who don't give up a lot of contact. So it'll be interesting to see how the Yankees manage this down the stretch with 3 guys who are all free agents and they could let go with no cost.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on. They have to actually come here and make an impact. This can't just be like, you have a shitty game, you give up 3 runs, and then, you bounce back. You have to be out there putting together heavy ground ball percentages, really good outings, no walks, effective, aggressive pitching, and showcasing the quality that we know that these both pitchers have. So I think that's kind of like the MO of what their return has to look like. But it's yet to be seen. We have not seen what they're going to do. We don't know if they're going to be good. We don't know if they're going to be bad. But at the very least, we know that the Yankees have reinforcements on the way on a multitude of different levels, whether it be Harrison Bader in the outfield, whether it be Rizzo on the infield, or DJ on the injured list, hopefully coming back next week. And then the bullpens, Efros, he's a couple more weeks, I think. And then, Britton, Chapman, of course, and Castro. So there's a lot of guys, even Benintendi, if we want to throw him in the outfield as a guy who could return. We don't know just yet what his injury recovery process is looking like, but hopefully it's speedy and he can make an impact down the stretch. But, bullpen definitely is a strong suit for this team. You look at Greg Weisser, you look at Clark Schmidt, they've pulled up anybody to come help this squad, and Marinaccio in addition, and they've looked great. For the most part, they've been pretty solid, or at least showcase some optimism for the future. So I'm excited about that, guys. But I'd love to hear your perspectives below in the YouTube comments about this bullpen, about this team as they're starting to look a little bit healthier, what this means for them as they hit their stride. But we need to see consistency, right? They had 2 games that were fantastic. They've won 6 of the last 8, but now they had a day off. We'll see if they can bounce back. We'll see if they can take down Boston tonight in a 2-game series today and tomorrow. And then, of course, we travel to Milwaukee. So a hostile territory, but this Yankee team is more than good enough to overcome these challenges. And then you have Toronto playing Tampa right now. So they're one of those teams is losing games in the AL East, while the Yankees are sitting there not playing. Last night, I think Toronto won yesterday. So that's a really good thing for the Yankees that Tampa lost a game. But one of those guys is still gaining, but the Yankees need to keep winning games here. So hopefully they can do that over the next few days, my friends. But hopefully you guys enjoy this episode of Fireside Yankees. Make sure to like and subscribe as always, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.